Good morning. Donald Trump reaching out to minority voters, explaining why he says he would be best fit for the White House. Good morning, everyone. I'm Maria Bartiromo. Welcome to the program. This is Sunday Morning Futures. Trump making the appeal to voters in Michigan and Virginia. But critics are questioning the locations he picked to share these messages. We'll take a look at that with our panel. But first, an all-star lineup this morning. I'll go one-on-one with Eric Trump on his father's campaign shakeup and a lot more. Plus, Newt Gingrich with me on the White House's admission that the $400 million payment to Iran was tied to the hostages. And Green Party candidate Jill Stein will join me live. We're looking ahead right now on Sunday Morning Futures. So much for joining us.
It's great being here, Maria.
Obviously, the news of the weekend, Paul Manafort now resigning. What does this tell us about where the campaign structure is? Is this a direct result of the team bringing in two new people to really run things?
Yeah, there's no question. And by the way, Paul's a great guy. And I think my father didn't want to be, distracted by, whatever things that, Paul was dealing with. And, Paul was amazing. And, he helped us get through the primary process. He helped us get through the convention. He did a great job with the delegates, now you look at, Kellyanne and some of the other people that we're bringing in, and they're absolutely fantastic. And, I think they're going to be the ones that bring us, all the way through November 8th and ultimately get us the victory. But again, my father just didn't want to have the distraction looming, over the campaign and, quite frankly, looming over all the issues that Hillary's facing right now.
Yeah, and I think right off the bat, as soon as you brought in two new players, we saw a little shift. Yeah. We saw what your father said a couple of days ago. We saw what he said in terms of saying, look, I own this. I'm taking responsibility for if I may have insulted somebody. Yeah. Was that a result of the two new players that you brought in to run the campaign?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I think,
or was that from the inside, his children? Did you advise him to do this?
I think it's him, right? I mean, at the end of the day, my father's my father, right? I mean, let Trump be Trump, and I think that's what, that's when he does best. That's who he is, and that's what's created this, incredible movement that he started. At the same time, don't get me wrong, a lot of people are opining on this, and I think he's felt it, as well. And I think coming out with a great sense of humility, again, the father that I've known my entire life, I think it was amazing. And as I mentioned, I was at that speech, and the speech was amazing, and it was electric, and the room was electric, and I was proud of him for doing that.
Well, clearly, coming out of the convention, which was very successful for you, the convention, something happened, and obviously Paul Manafort wasn't doing it. I mean, he wasn't doing the job because the campaign lost ground after the convention. So does this change now give more clarity? You've got two new players. Does it give that freshness that you need with these just 80 days left?
Yeah, possibly. And I wouldn't even say we came out of the convention. We had an amazing convention. We had a massive bump. In fact, one of the biggest bumps coming out of the convention that you could have imagined, right? And then, obviously they had their convention right after, and traditionally they'll get a bump too, right? And so it's really interesting. I think right now you're really seeing in the latest polls, you're really seeing that totally level out, and it's really back to parity. And Hillary spent $200 million in advertising against us. We've spent nothing against her yet our numbers are at parity. And I think that's probably pretty frustrating for them. But believe me, they don't like the fact that we have a great war chest, saved up, and they've spent all this money, and yet we're, dead even in the polls. They're not thrilled about that.
We're looking at the polls tighten in a big way. I mean, obviously, what your father is doing is working. Now, your father made a decision to go to Louisiana in the face of this terrible flooding that we're seeing there, to speak to the people, to just express his condolences and hurt with them. Why? Why is he doing this now?
Yeah, well, you have coffins floating down the street. You have houses that are underwater. You have cars that are underwater. You have people who have lost their lives. And the President of the United States is in Martha's Vineyard playing golf. He can't be bothered to hop on Air Force One, one of the nicest planes in the world, to fly down there for half a day to check in on the situation. He's sitting there playing, his 200th round of golf this year. At the same time, Hillary is sitting there, resting. I mean, these are our leaders. It is shocking. These are the people that we have elected as a country to lead. And I think my father was just frustrated by it, and so he went down there to show his support with Mike Pence. He's on the ground, and I'm proud of him for doing that. But I'm disgusted by the fact that the Commander-in-Chief of the United States couldn't be bothered to hop on Air Force One, to fly down there for a couple hours to find out what was going on. It's It's truly, truly sad.
We now know that the White House has admitted that this $400 million that went to Iran was, in fact, contingent upon them releasing the American hostages. What does your father plan in terms of the Iran deal? How easy would it be to reverse? And your thoughts on this hostage payment that we now know was, in fact, ransom?
Maria, I actually think the Iran deal was one of the things that it was almost the auspices of getting my father to run for president. I remember, when that was first talked about years ago, and he was shaking his head. We can't be serious. So we can't honestly consider giving $150 billion to a country that hates our guts, that hates our way of life, that detests everything about Western civilization. We can't be serious about doing that, and they ended up doing it. And then you see, obviously, the 4 prisoners were contingent on the $400 million. And you're sitting there as a guy who travels overseas. I mean, they put a target on every American's head that leaves, the boundaries of this country, including, quite frankly, every military personnel that we have overseas, because clearly our government is now paying, for hostages. You simply can't do it. I mean, the $150 billion was atrocious. $400 million in cash being dropped off in the middle of the night is just as bad. I mean, you almost can't make this up. I mean, you really almost can't make this up.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even know the terms because we learned about it after it was already done. So again, the president went around Congress. What can we expect?
And by the way, he lied about it.
Yeah,
he lied about it. He said that it wasn't ransom money. The 400 had nothing to do with the hostages. No different than he lied about Obamacare, where he said you'd get to keep your doctor, you'd get to keep your plan. No different than Hillary Clinton lies about the 33,000 emails. No different than Hillary Clinton lies about Benghazi, right? I mean, no different than Hillary Clinton lies about every scandal that they've had in the White House. I mean, this is what you're getting from our politicians in this country. We're America. We're better than that. We need to have people who are actually honest with the citizens of this nation and represent them well, and that's simply not happening.
Which is why he reached out to the Hispanic community this weekend, reached out to the African-American community earlier last week. Yeah. What should we expect in terms of these groups? Is he going to be able to really move the needle in terms of Hispanics, African-Americans, women, another group that he really needs to get those numbers up in terms of the vote?
Yeah, well, I hope so. And it's interesting as a non-politician stepping in and seeing how ingrained politics are in certain people that they can never take off the blinders and look outside their party, the party that they've always voted for before. But again, if you look at what Democrats have done, for inner cities, for inner city youth, again, 60% unemployment. I mean, they've never done anything. They always promise great things, and then nothing ever happens. If you look at Chicago, right, you have 2,500 shootings this year alone in Obama's home city. If you look at Detroit, if you look at Baltimore, if you look at so many of these places, they've been run by Democrats for the last 50, 60, 70 years. And look what happens. They never get better. They just never get better. And I think part of my father's message last night is, why not try something new? Why not give me a chance? Let me bring back jobs to this country. Let me fix an educational system that's a total disaster, that's full of fraud and waste and abuse and nonsense. Let me fix these problems. It's something I can do. I mean, what do you have to lose? And that's what he said last night. What do you have to lose? It's broken. I will fix it. Give me the chance to fix it.
Eric, it's nice to have you on the program today. Thank you so much. We'll be watching. Eric Trump. All right, my thanks to Eric Trump. We conducted that interview Friday afternoon, and since the interview, the White House has announced President Obama now will visit Louisiana. He's going there this Tuesday. The state's governor, John Bel Edwards, making it clear that he said he requested the president wait a week after the rain fell to allow emergency responders to do their work and for the cleanup to get underway. So we will be bringing you more once the president does go to Louisiana on Tuesday. Big changes coming to the Clinton Foundation, meanwhile, regardless of whether Hillary Clinton moves into the White House. Is it enough to stem the wave of criticism about the foundation's donations policy? Who gives them money? We will delve into that with Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn live next. You can follow me on Twitter at Maria Bartiromo, at Sunday Futures. Let us know what you'd like to hear from Congresswoman Blackburn. We're looking ahead right now on Sunday Morning Future. Clinton be elected.
Maria, these are things that should have taken place when she became Secretary of State. The former president should have removed himself from the board. They should have had outside oversight and guidance on that board. They should have changed the way they were working and stopped taking some of these foreign contributions that they had been taking.
So where is the investigation around the Clinton Foundation right now, Congresswoman? Because there's really conflicting reports in terms of whether or not this is in the eye of regulators right now.
Well, we have our letter. As you know, May 19th, 2015 was the first letter that we sent over to the IRS with a non-response. We have followed that subsequently with letters to the FTC, which oversees nonprofits, and then the letter currently that we have before the IRS, the FTC, and the FBI together. We have received a referral to the nonprofits division of the IRS. We think this is important. And Maria, we think one of the things that is most significant in this, we know the Clinton Foundation went from 1998 to 2007 and did not report the foreign contributions that they were receiving. They never reported that to the IRS. So we do think there is a reason to move forward with the examination there. Via the FTC, there is a reason to question there because they're giving only 13% of what they bring in to their stated mission, which of course was never altered from when it was the library. And, you know, Maria, charities should be giving more than half of what they bring in. So there's reason for that review there. And then, of course, the FBI, we think they should look at some of these issues around Frank Giestra, Uranium One, Laureate Education, the list goes on and on, the Nigerian land deal.
Yeah, you mentioned a number of the really more onerous situations and very straightforward. So the Uranium One deal, for example, Hillary Clinton's State Department sold 25% of the U.S.'s uranium to Russia. And we should point out that uranium is the stuff that makes nuclear bombs.
Right.
And then very soon after, the company Uranium One donated to the Clinton Foundation, and then Bill Clinton got money for a speech in Moscow.
That is right. And see, when you look at the timeline and the way you always have the participation of Hillary, of Bill, the foundation, and the outside entity, that circuitous relationship should cause everyone concern. And it is something that the American people deserve some answers to. And, you know, now we know that there were emails that were written by staffers from the State Department requesting appointments or interviews for individuals who had contributed to the foundation. They're saying they're finally going to do the right thing if she is elected president. But this is something that I think they're too far down the road for this to even begin to make a difference in the mind of the voter.
Yeah, but I mean, in the mind of the voter, is this going to sway them come November 8th? What if we don't get any details in terms of the investigation and what lawmakers find out any more than we know, of course, by the election?
You know, Maria, I think it adds, it's that compound effect. People remember the scandals that have always been kind of following along with Bill and Hillary Clinton, and they go back decades, and people know that. And now they look at, once he left the presidency, how they operated this foundation. They never refiled their mission to do a global initiative. I think that's why they're going to close it down after this year. They never filed the 990s for foreign contributions, and only after she became Secretary of State did they alter that process. Yeah. It is that web of deception, deceit, of always playing with a different set of rules. And if you or I had done this, we would be in jail.
Yeah. All right, we'll keep checking back with you, Congresswoman, and see what you find out. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it very much. Marsha Blackburn there. The Obama administration admitting now that it did delay a $400 million payment to Iran as leverage for 4 American prisoners. Was it ransom? Well, it certainly looks like it. Newt Gingrich will join us next on that, and then Donald Trump's so-called pivot as we look ahead on Sunday Morning Future. Stay with us. The $400 million that it paid to Iran was, in fact, done in agreement with the release of 4 Americans held in the country. Donald Trump claiming President Obama lied about this not being a ransom payment. Newt Gingrich is a former Speaker of the House and a Fox News contributor. Mr. Speaker, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Well, if it looks like ransom and it smells like ransom, I guess this was a ransom payment.
You know, I'm always surprised that people are surprised that Obama lies. Obama lied about you getting to keep your doctor. He lied about you getting to keep your insurance. He lied consistently about this kind of government he wanted to create. Why would he lied about a Syrian red line. I mean, why would you think this is any different? The reason that Hillary lies so much is that if you're a modern liberal Democrat, you can't tell the truth and survive. If Obama had gone to the country and said, we're going to pay ransom. Yeah, it's a dictatorship. Yeah, they're bad people. Yeah, they've been kidnapping Americans. But hey, you got to understand my problem. The country would have repudiated him overwhelmingly. And they count on us just tolerating and shrugging off a routine pattern of lying while they do things that are really bad. I mean, paying $400 million in. I mean, think about how humiliating this is. Because you can't legally use U.S. dollars because Congress passed a law blocking it. And it's, by the way, also illegal to do what they did, which is take dollars, turn them into euros and Swiss francs, bundle them up. I mean, these bundles are absurdity. It looks like it's a movie like Lethal Weapons 9 or something.
It's like the mafia.
And so the United States humiliates itself flying cash into Iran at the same time that they release 4 people, which is a total victory for the dictatorship and for terrorism.
What would you expect from Hillary Clinton as it relates to Iran? And Donald Trump has said he would get in there and repeal, cancel out this nuclear deal with the Iranians. How easy or tough would that be, Newt? I mean, it's not the kind of situation you can just reverse, right? Even as they chant death to America.
Look, the Iranians routinely break the agreements. Every time they fire a missile, they are breaking the agreements which block them from testing. A relatively intelligent lawyer could find plenty of evidence in the last few months that they have broken the agreement so often that we can vitiate and just drop it and say we're not going to do it. And then what are they going to do? What you have here is a phony legalism in which the Americans subject themselves to the rule of law while the dictatorship exploits every loophole it can in violation of the rule of law. I think Trump would turn that around. But Hillary will be Barack Obama with corruption. I mean, she'll be as radical as he is. She'll be as driven to do things by executive order as he is. But she'll add a layer of corruption, unlike the Obama. I mean, there's no evidence that Obama personally is particularly corrupt. She and Bill are so corrupt, they will be the most corrupt couple ever to move into the White House if they win.
Meanwhile, we seem to be watching this pivot happening with Donald Trump. We've been talking about this this morning. Is this a new pivot, Newt? What's going on right now with his campaign, and is he doubling down on humility? He apologized, said he regrets things. Is he going to reach out, for example, to others who perhaps he may have insulted? And what does this mean for his campaign?
Well, I think there are 2 characteristics about Trump that are a little contradictory. On the one hand, he's very stubborn, which is a characteristic of very successful people. On the other hand, he's very, very smart. So after a while, the amount he learns overwhelms his stubbornness. And I think that's what happened here. He figured out that going into a general election was very different from winning the primaries. That really took him 5 or 6 weeks because he had done so well in the primaries. I think he didn't want to give up the techniques that were working, but gradually he came to realize that that wasn't working anymore. He's brought on 2 really strong people. I mean, Steve Bannon and Kellyanne Conway are remarkable talents. And I noticed all this last week, every single speech, starting on Monday with radical Islam and coming all the way up, there was a tonal quality that was even more important than the words. He was he was reassuring people that he was in control of himself, that he was talking in a reasonable way. You can say as Ronald Reagan taught us, you can say very strong things if you say it in a very calm tone.
Do you think then this could resonate with some of those never-Trumpers? Will this pivot resonate with some of the Republicans that have been unwilling to get on board?
Yeah, I think there are 3 groups. There are the skeptics. They're going to come on board pretty fast just because he's getting to be so controlled and so reassuring, and his ideas are so compelling. They're going to come on fast. There are the sort of personal never-Trumpers who eventually are going to, I think, get over it, particularly as they watch Hillary, and they're going to end up with him. And then there are the people who have, as I said a minute ago, if you're a real foreign policy, let's go over there and force democracy everywhere and send another 1 million American troops and do the things we need to do, and to heck with the cost. you shouldn't be for Trump. I mean, Trump's not going to do anything you want him to do. You should be for Hillary, because she's going to be much more likely to get us in the next war than Donald Trump is.
Wow. Mr. Speaker, good to speak with you. Thanks so much.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
We appreciate it. Newt Gingrich there. Meanwhile, Donald Trump finally airing his first television ads of the general election season, hammering the system as rigged. Will his claim help him regain the footing in the polls? Eric Shawn dives into the issue of voter fraud. We're looking ahead, and we'll take a look at that next on Sunday Morning Future. Stay with us. Tomorrow will announce that he has restored voting rights for 13,000 felons on a case-by-case basis, and he will be announcing that tomorrow. Donald Trump is also laying the groundwork for claims of voter fraud. A brand new television ad airing in several swing states says that the system is rigged. The Trump campaign is spending $5 million to run the commercials, trying to fire up Republicans in states where early voting gets underway in a few weeks, like North Carolina, for example, where the courts struck down a voter ID law that judges said targeted African Americans. Our Fox News senior correspondent Eric Shawn digs deeper into these concerns. So you don't need an ID to vote?
Well, it depends upon what state you're in, if it's a photo ID or not, if you have an affidavit. You know, Maria, for years I've covered and investigated voter and election fraud cases here at Fox News, and you won't believe what we found. Take a look at this. These are absentee ballots that were faked. Prosecutors in Troy, New York said politicians simply stole elections by handing in fraudulent ballots that they filled out as real votes. The unsuspecting voters we talked to said they did not even know their votes were robbed. So you didn't write that?
I did not.
You didn't cast a ballot?
I did not.
Did you vote?
No.
Did you fill out an absentee ballot?
Nope.
Did you fill out an absentee ballot application?
Nope, I didn't fill out any of those.
So your vote was a fraud?
It was.
In Kentucky, prosecutors said 20 public officials stole elections by buying votes, spending $400,000 to buy 8,000 votes over several elections. You sold your vote?
Mm-hmm.
How much did you sell your vote for?
$25.
Well, in Cincinnati, veteran poll worker Hillary Richardson was charged with voting in the 2008 and 2012 presidential election not once, but 2 and 3 times. She pled no contest to 4 counts, including voting for her sister, who had been in a coma for a decade. In Pennsylvania, 7 election officials have been hit with election fraud charges, deaths in the last year and a half, from cases of illegal voting to tampering with voting machines and adding phony votes. You know, a 2012 report by a Philadelphia Republican city commissioner found voting by non-registered individuals, voting divisions with more votes than voters, individuals voting more than once, and voting by non-U.S. citizens. And election fraud actually hit the race for the White House in the 2008 race. Democratic operatives in Indiana were convicted of faking signatures on the presidential petitions that put then Senator Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton on the ballot. So many signatures were phony that authorities said the president may not have actually had enough signatures to qualify for the primary ballot. Is that your signature on this?
That's not my signature.
Did you sign this petition for Barack Obama?
No.
You did not?
No.
I did not sign for Barack Obama.
So someone forged this?
That's correct.
Well, so this is how it worked in Indiana. It is unbelievable. You need 500 signatures from each congressional district in Indiana. In South Bend, President Obama qualified with 534 signatures. But prosecutors said 100 to 200 signatures were faked. So that brings the Obama number down below the legal number that he needed to qualify. The prosecutor told me, had this been caught at the time, Maria, the president probably would not have qualified for the ballot and would have been bounced from that primary ballot. But all this fraud wasn't caught until 3 years after the election.
This is unbelievable, Eric. You've done such good work on this. We want to bring in, so congratulations, thank you. John Fund is with us. He is columnist for National Review magazine. John, thank you very much for joining us. And you two have done so much work on this. First off, the Terry McAuliffe situation in Virginia tomorrow. What's your sense? Would that classify as potentially raising a red flag for potential voter fraud?
Well, felons aren't allowed to vote until they get their rights restored. They've proved themselves to be part of the mainstream of society. What Terry McAuliffe is doing is not on a case-by-case basis. He's trying to put every felon back on the voter rolls, including 232 serious sex offenders. So there was no distinction made between what kind of crime you committed and the kind of people Terry McAuliffe wanted to give back the voting rights to.
So that could basically come under review in terms of whether or not this is voting fraud.
Well, the Supreme Court has already slapped him down and said he can't do it for all 200,000. So now he's trying to do it for a small segment of that group.
How worried are you? What's your reaction to Eric's report?
Well, we have a sloppy, inefficient system. So sometimes you don't know when the sloppiness ends and the fraud begins, because the sloppiness feeds into the fraud. We make it so easy for people to vote in someone else's name. In New York City, investigators from the New York City Department of Investigation went out and tried to vote in the names of people who were out of state, dead, or in felons. And 61 out of 63 times they were handed ballots. One of the times, the 2 times they weren't, is because somebody was trying to vote in the name of the son of one of the poll workers. So the point is, there's a 97% success rate, because if you don't have an ID law, as Eric said, in half the states you don't, there is no way to really catch someone. And once they vote, it goes in the ballots with all the other ballots, and you can never segregate it out and find out where the fraud is.
Eric.
Yeah, you know what we saw in 2008, the Norma Coleman, Al Franken race, that they separated by 341 votes. It wasn't until later that studies found at least 1,000 felons they believe illegally voted in that race,
and 200 were convicted.
200 convicted, yeah. So, but that still didn't get to the 341. But it
was found out after he was sworn in. You couldn't do anything.
I mean, these no ID states it's just mind-boggling. Who's to stop anybody from voting 4 times?
Here's my point. I don't think there are very many people who don't have an ID, but if there are, let's get them one, because you can't participate in the mainstream of American life. You can't get a job, you can't get a government benefit, you can't get on Medicare, you can't travel, can't cash a check. But these groups that are fighting the voter ID laws, if they spent all those legal fees on actually getting people IDs, we wouldn't have this debate.
Are we going to see any efforts to stop this, to make sure that we actually see a system that is fair?
Well, the election officials I've talked to, they say that they are confident that any fraud will be caught. They pointed these cases, for example, as evidence of that. And in Rhode Island and in New Hampshire, the Secretary of States there say the way to do it is to have an ID, but with an affidavit, that if you don't have the photo ID, you fill out an affidavit. Your vote then has a paper trail to be challenged later if there's any type of problem.
And those secretaries of states are Democrats, by the way.
Yeah, they are.
And they're honest anti-fraud Democrats. I think the real issue here is that we have to get groups, outside groups, not necessarily affiliated with campaigns. They're nonpartisan groups like TrueTheVote.org out of Texas, which is a national organization. If you watch people, if you have people who pressure prosecutors to pay attention to this as a priority, you can reduce voter fraud. It's like shoplifting. If you do 3 things in shoplifting, you reduce shoplifting 40%. Put up a camera even if you don't turn it on, have a security guard even if he's asleep, and put up a sign that says prosecutions will take place. You cut shoplifting by 40%. It's the same thing with voter fraud.
Well, there's also the whole idea, if the IRS is going to target conservatives, right? I mean, that's another part of this, because people are saying you're quieting down an enormous group by targeting them and making them unable to participate.
But there's no evidence in all of these court cases, including the ones you mentioned. There was no evidence of anyone who'd ever been prevented from actually voting. No names were put forward. The issue here is we have 2 civil rights. The civil right to, of course, vote, not to be intimidated. That's why we have a Voting Rights Act.
Right.
But we also have a civil right not to have your vote canceled out by someone who shouldn't be voting, someone who's dead, someone who's a felon. If you get your vote canceled out, it's as if you didn't vote.
Right. Well, I know, Eric, you're going to be doing more work on this. It's an important subject. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll be on it. Thank
Eric,
you.
Sean, John Fund, good to see you, sir. Thank you. Let's get a look at what's coming up top of the hour. Media Buzz. Here's Howie Kurtz in Los Angeles today. Hi, Howie.
An early good morning from California, Maria. We're going to be all over the coverage of the Trump campaign shakeup, the hiring of the chairman of Breitbart, the conservative website, the impact, and the media skepticism about whether he really is regretting, as he said in a speech, some of his past comments. We'll look at new questions about the Clinton Foundation and this bizarre Ryan Lochte story, the bogus burglary story, another non-apology with Matt Lauer yesterday. We'll take a look at that as well.
Yeah, that really is a bizarre story. Howie, we'll see you in about 20 minutes. Thank you so much. We're just about 1 month away from the first presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, but there are 2 other candidates hoping to join that debate stage. Green Party nominee Jill Stein will join me live next. We're looking ahead right now.
Have other choices. Right now, the majority of voters do not like this 2-party election process, and Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have the highest rates of disapproval and dislike of any candidates ever in presidential elections. More more people than ever are clamoring for
To participate, but outside you protested. You were arrested for disorderly conduct when you tried to enter the hall against the police officer's orders. Are you going to be outside again if you don't get in?
You can be sure that I will, and I won't be alone this time. I think there are a lot of Americans who feel like we not only have a right to vote, we have a right to know who we can vote for, especially in an election where people are tired of being thrown under the bus on jobs, on health care, on student debt, and people are clamoring for more choices. So let's let a real debate be held, and then let's let the American people decide.
Let's talk to those people right now. You've got this block of people who are very loyal to Hillary Clinton. You've got another block of people that are loyal to Donald Trump. Then you've got this enormous block in the middle of independents, some of them undecided right now. How are you going to resonate with them? What's your most important policy to speak to those people?
Well, we need jobs. You know, instead of sending the jobs overseas, we need jobs. And while Donald Trump may talk about stopping these corporate trade deals, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, he himself has been sending his jobs overseas. So we need jobs here. We need to end student debt. We bailed out Wall Street. We're calling for the bailout of a generation that's basically been held hostage in unpayable debt. We need good jobs that pay decent wages. We need health care as a human right. And we need to solve this climate crisis. For those who ever doubted it, just look at California and let's look at what's happening at Louisiana and the heat waves in the Northeast. We say solve these at the same time. We call for a New Deal kind of program, but a Green New Deal that will transition us to the energy of the future and the economy of the future.
Why should people trust you leading the economy? How are you going to create jobs?
Great. So, number one, I'm the only candidate in this race that doesn't take lobbyist money, that doesn't take corporate money, and that doesn't have a super PAC. I'm a physician, not a politician, and I'm in this to help heal our very sick political system so that we can fix all the other things that are literally putting our lives on the line. And, you know, how will I do this? By unleashing the power of the American people, who should be the engine of our democracy. Because I'm not on the payroll of the big banks or the war profiteers, I actually have the liberty to stand up for what the American people are clamoring for. And with an organizer-in-chief in the White House, we can actually mobilize the public support to instruct our elected representatives who should be representing us, not the big money interests whom they've been taking marching orders from.
What industry do you think is most poised to see job creation under your leadership?
You know, I think it's especially clean, renewable energy. So it's wind, it's solar, it's conservation, it's manufacturing of all the different efficiency devices, and also it's sustainable agriculture that has become so popular in so many communities. We deserve to have a food system that's making us healthy. Right now, our industrial food system is making us sick. And this, by the way, Maria, is how we pay for this. The studies show that we get so much healthier when we move to an economy of clean energy without pollution, a healthy food system, and a transportation system that also allows us to use recreation as transportation. That means safe sidewalks and bike paths. We get so much healthier that our health savings alone is enough to pay for the cost of the energy transition.
That's a really good point. Jill Stein, great to see you.
Great to see you,
We'll
Maria.
be watching the developments. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Jill Stein. The Trump campaign doubling down on its spending for the month of July. What did they get for their money, and has it helped? Our political... Welcome back. Donald Trump's campaign more than doubled its spending last month, according to the federal filings, to more than $19 million. That despite a steady payroll buying no TV ads or spending money to build out a ground game. So where did the money go? About half went to a web design firm, more air travel, and consultants. All of that, as Mr. Trump says, the Republican Party has to reach out more to African-American voters. I want to bring in our panel right now Ed Rollins, former campaign manager for the Reagan-Bush ticket in 1984. He is part of a Trump super PAC. Julie Roginski is here, Democratic strategist and Fox News contributor. Mary Kissel is with us, a member of the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. Good to see everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. In terms of the money raised, they had a good July, Ed Rollins, but the way the money is spent, very different than the way Hillary Clinton is spending money.
The big donors have not totally kicked in yet, and in my sense is they may not at the end of the day, but he's got enough money to keep moving forward. The critical thing here, he has to build a ground game. If this comes down to a 3 or 4% race, that's where it is. And they're now on TV. They got their first TV ad on, and I think he is much more disciplined. I think this new team, Steve Bannon and Kellyanne, who I've worked with in many campaigns, is a quality professional, and I think that this is the team. They got to take it across the finish line, and certainly Manafort was not going to do that. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Julie, he's had a positive reaction to this new team in place so far. It looks like he's also getting a bump in the polls.
Well, he has, but let's see what happens next week. Every time Trump does something that's good for 24 or 48 hours, all of us get excited. The pivot is finally here. It's finally coming. It never comes. I will say his former campaign team, and Ed, I think you'll agree with me, committed malpractice.
Absolutely.
This is money that should have been spent on a ground game. It should have been spent on advertising. It should not have gone to overhead the way it has. He was gouged by his consultants. He was gouged by the people that he paid. They're not giving him good advice. They should have put this on TV, on the air, on the ground. Not what they did with it, which is essentially pocket the money. It is malpractice of the highest degree. If there were lawyers, they would have been disbarred for this.
And at the same time, Hillary Clinton has spent all of her money on just that.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Mary, what do you think?
I'm not sure you can blame the consultants fully, however. I mean, Donald Trump is Donald Trump, and he's made this campaign about himself. Why was there so much attention to this one word, regret, in his speech on Friday? It's because we're focusing on Donald Trump's feelings. We're not focusing on his policy ideas or why they're better than Hillary Clinton's. I think, look, he knew that the campaign was spiraling downwards. He's not leading in any of the polls. There's the prospect of losing the Senate. It's a good sign that he brought in a pro like Kellyanne Conway as a pollster, but he has to prove that he not only has the temperament to be in office, but that he can sustain some of these messages that he started to lay out in these speeches last week. We'll see, but the polls don't change overnight.
Can he do that?
I don't know if he has the character to do it. He hasn't proved so far. He isn't studying any policy measures. We don't have specifics on what would replace Obamacare, how he would defeat ISIS, the tax plan, for instance. If you read the speeches, there are a lot of good themes in there. I'm glad that he supports charter schools. I'm glad that he wants to get rid of regulatory tape. I'm glad that he wants to unleash American energy. That's very positive.
Yeah.
This was a very winnable campaign. I think if you had that campaign structure in place that Julie was talking about, and you had a more disciplined candidate, he'd be ahead by 10 or 20 points at this time in the race.
Newt Gingrich laid out a few minutes ago on your show the offenses that they need to be on. If this campaign comes down to be about him and his controversies, then he's not going to win. If it's about her and the misfires that she's done, and I don't want to say misdemeanor crimes because I don't believe in charging someone with a crime, but I think at the end of the day there's vulnerabilities there. The combination of Obama and what they have done and the paying the Iranian hostages, what have you. There's so much stuff there, and Newt laid it out very well.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they have to be.
The problem, though, is, and this continues to be something that's a concern for him, is that Mary's absolutely right. He can't lay it out. Gingrich may have laid it out. You certainly just laid it out. He can't focus on her. He has to constitutionally only focus on himself. And that's not what people want to hear. They want to hear how he's going to. It's pathological. People want to hear how he's going to improve their lives, not what he feels about himself.
And I don't think you can just do it on Twitter and Facebook and at rallies. It was good that he went to Louisiana, but let's see him go to a charter school in the Bronx. Let's see him go into downtown L.A. Have more press gaggles. Get out there, meet voters, prove that you really care about these communities. I think Kellyanne Conway will try to push him in that direction, but ultimately it's up to the candidate himself.
He likes the rallies, but the problem with rallies is it's just a small audience in front of you, whether it's 7,000 or 10,000. I remind them that 100,000 people were at Mondale's rally in New York City the day before he lost 49 states.
There you go. Bottom line. Great panel. Thanks, everybody.